Hello again, and in this one I'm going to do something a bit different. I'm going to show you behind the scenes of my layout and hopefully answer some of the questions that people have been asking, and you'll get to see a different side of Wood Hill Park. So here we go. Hello and welcome back to Wood Hill Park. From the moment you climb up the loft ladder, you're coming up into a different world. And then it's a case of switching the lights on in the loft. And you're in a different world. This world being the world of Wood Hill Park. This world at some points is a very messy world, as it's a modeller's paradise, you might say, with everything you need to do the job at hand, but not necessarily very tidily. It's a case of switching on the layout lights and watching this world come to life. The first track I laid on this layout was this end of the station and constructed these double tunnels. I've yet to do the landscape above, but I'm sure to get around to it soon. So I constructed this area and started with a station over here. The station is on average about 2.3 metres and takes 6 coaches and a loco, and possibly 7 with a loco hanging over the end of the station. I originally made the station out of old Hornby platforms and continued to use them and adapt them to my needs, rather than just rip them up and replace them with something else. So they've been added to over the years and improved. The station has 2 bay sidings at the front of the station, and then you've got platform 1 serving one of these bay sidings, and then you've got platform 2 serving one of the loops on the lower baseboard, and then the other loop going the other direction is platform 3, and that's also on the lower baseboard. And then you've got platform 4, which a lot of the time I use as storage, but can be used on a lower loop. And then you've got platform 5, which is a through loop what visits the top section of the layout and the lower section. And then another bay platform up against the retaining wall that is used for storage most of the time, or excursions of preserved stock, and that is basically the station. I got a footbridge that comes out of the station at the front that serves all platforms, as well as the station serving the platform in the foreground. There are 2 points that can be used for shuffling the trains between the loops. One at this end of the station and the other being at this end of the station. This just helps me move stock around without having the hand of God involved, and most of the time it's not really a problem, except for the odd crossover maybe occasionally, but I seem to have solved most issues now. The retaining wall at the back of the station was a rather expensive, exploit, you might say, in buying a load of viaducts, Hornby viaducts, and then using the parapet at the top, and then plasticard brick sheet underneath, and did end up somewhat a bit expensive, but a little bit unique. Possibly not the best solution, but in my case I'm quite happy with it. This raised section at the back of the station is approximately 100mm high and looks down over the entirety of the station as it goes along the back. Has twin tracks and a ID back scene of housing in the background. The station itself is constantly evolving, and it wasn't that long ago I did a total revamp of this area, and I'm going to have another look at it, as I'm not happy with the pavement and other bits and pieces of detailing. This old archway assembly was from my original layout, and I just incorporated it into this station area. The bridge at the end of the station, I don't seem to be that happy with it most of the time. I keep playing with it and I'm still not happy with this girder bridge. I need to work on it. Then after the station, the bridge, this section then goes into a sort of slightly country sort of scene. The top area goes into a slight industrial come outskirts village, and the lower section then finds its way going into a tunnel which then climbs up to the upper section. Also lower lines carry on round and go into a tunnel over here to go round to the other side of the layout. Scene sits nicely above the tunnel and the raised section that comes round on curves, and from this village scene right round and down to the end of the station is 6 meters long. From the village corner that then goes across the back of the loft and round with upper lines and the lower line in the background coming up an incline to meet the top lines. The area that is travelled across this point, it is 3 meters wide from this country scene this side over to the village. In the foreground I've got a quarry that I don't know if I'm going to keep, that I sort of built from the early stages of the layout. But as we make our way across, taking note, lines going underneath this area, as well as 3 lines on top at this point, and a line over the background that is rising up to feed the top level. Once you come round to this area, you're starting to enter the TMD, and the bottom level is coming out of a tunnel with 2 tracks. So at this point the TMD starts, and this area is another 6 meters long, which incorporates an embankment. It has got various features including a bridge, and in the background the TMD starts with a maintenance shed, and then more maintenance sheds, and then directly after the bridge on the lower section there's a bridge over a canal which is entering underneath the TMD. The embankment carries on down with the TMD in the background. 2 tracks at the bottom with a siding, and 3 tracks at the top. 1 track visiting the top and returning to the lower level, and 2 tracks doing the rounds on the upper level. The TMD is rather cluttered, as it tends to act more of a fiddle yard for me, as I don't have a fiddle yard at this point, as most of my layout is 360 degrees of scenery. So it comes along past all the maintenance yards, comes up to this corner, as I say, 6 meters long, and this corner there's sidings in the background for the TMD. There's a track that visits the top level and then returns to the lower level, which disappears behind the scenic board at the back, and then 2 lines that carry on round the top level over to the other side where you're above the station. At this point there is a siding that comes off and then goes in to my sort of heritage yard, which is rather cluttered as well, and acts as a bit of a storage area at the same time. So this area is 3 meters wide, and the trains travelling around the top level go behind the preservation yard, and then through a tunnel underneath what I've yet to work out what I'm going to do with this area. this is something that needs to be addressed. And then you're back to the tunnel portals, entering the station again with the upper level and 3 lines beneath, or 4 lines, because there is a 4th line that travels around the baseboard at the bottom level, goes under the TMD, but I very rarely use that. So the line in the with the containers on is a line that comes from the upper baseboard to the lower baseboard, and then you've got 2 lines in the distance behind the retaining wall, which are the lines that go around the top level, and then you've got the bottom lines that travel around the bottom level through the station in the foreground. You've probably heard me mention that my DCC controller is a Dynamis Ultima, and this is where it resides. It resides centre of the side of the loft with the station, and it's got a rolling road in front of it and also a programming track as well, and sits with a meter so I can check what what amperages that the locos are drawing as they go around. The TMD has 2 3-metre sidings in the distance that go into a carriage shed, and then a shorter siding, probably about 2.5 metres long, that also goes into the carriage shed, and then another shorter, or a very short siding, which a couple of carriages are on at the moment, and then really it's the maintenance side of the TMD in front, which just holds single locos and your carriage and stuff going into the maintenance sheds. The maintenance shed is 2 roads, and it's a backman shed, this particular one, and then a backman single road maintenance shed, and then in the distance is a Pico 2 road shed. The track configurations allow for trains to go through both of these sheds and out the other side and back onto the main line again, so effectively just like a siding that you can pull into and then pull out of again. The carriage shed over here is a Hornby shed, if I remember, but I took it and added various things to it and weathered it, made it look a little bit more authentic. But it's a resin base model, like most of them if you buy them these days, and does stand up to temperatures and moisture much better than cardboard models. So I didn't go down the cardboard route, as I've had problems in the past with cardboard warping and distorting and not lasting very long and not looking very authentic either. I think if I do anything like scratch building of sheds and stuff, it will be made out of plasticard and more rigid material like that, that's not affected by moisture. The depth of the layout either side, the 6 metre long sides, station and TMD, the depth is 90 centimetres from just inside the rafters to the back scenery. The far end of the loft is about 80 centimetres deep, but I am thinking of adding a bit more depth to this in the future. My working end of the loft with the heritage yard. The depth for the heritage yard is 60 centimetres and not very wide, and then I extended it to allow for a work area of 30 centimetres in front of it. So overall this is 90 centimetres deep, but not all layout. The height of the layout from the floor to the baseboard, the lower baseboard, is about 75 centimetres, I think. The layout lighting consists of LED strips going down the upright joists that hold up the roof. I've had numerous problems with these not being the right colour really. I should have bought a warm white, instead I bought a bright white, yeah. And I've used I think it's Seraphim or whatever it is, sort of a paint stain to go over them, and that has toned them down and taken some of the white away, and the bluey white, because it made the layout look a very bluey white, and that seems to have corrected the colour when you look at the layout. The layout looks quite natural now. I have these lights on both sides of the loft, but they're not up either end, so I'm not sure whether to continue one or two strips at the ends, but at the moment I haven't needed it. Down the centre of the loft, the apex is, I've forgotten how many tubes it is, 1, 2, 3, at least I think 4 tubes running down the apex through the centre of the loft, and these are all converted over to LED tubes, so should I want main lighting I just switch these on. Up my sort of working end of the layout, you might say, where I do some of my modelling, I've got a magnified light LED, and in the background another strip light which is also converted over to LED. The loft is insulated with a very high quality sort of silver bubble wrap, which does do a good job, but you know, could be improved on if you wanted to try and turn this into a more hospitable room, but it does a good job at keeping the cold out to a certain degree, even though it does get pretty cold up here and it doesn't hold the real heat back in the summer. This primarily goes right across the area of the loft that the layout is in and then goes down like a curtain to the ground either side, leaving the eaves not insulated, so effectively a big tent. A couple of years ago I had 2 Velux windows fitted in the roof, and they both are north facing, so I don't get much sun in them for good reason. I don't want any UV damage to any of the layout. I also have a bit of a shading at one end of a net to keep the unwanted insects out. So I've got 2 of these, which does help in the summer and does let in a reasonable amount of light during the day, even though it's not full-on sunshine. They really were worth putting in, and it's a good way of getting sort of the extreme hot temperatures out of the loft, even though it still gets very hot up here. What I use to heat the loft in the winter is this ceramic panel heater, and it does heat up very quick, and really only needs just a burst of heat occasionally. It's very effective, very useful. What I generally use to film the layout is a Sony HD camera, handy cam, that I've had quite a long time, but is very reliable, and possibly I could do with updating it, because it doesn't record in MP4, so I have to convert it over on a computer, which takes a bit of time. I've got an LED panel lamp on the left and a couple of small tripods, one that I can bend into any shape, and a large tripod that I tend to use most of the time. And this is basically my filmed equipment, plus a microphone, extension lead, and that's what I use. I settled on the name of Woodhill Park, partly because it includes my name and who I'm named after. Also, I wanted it to sound like an everyday station, so I went through different permutations and just came up with this. I like the park word because it is a countrified layout, and I like the idea of it sounding like it's a country location, but nothing elaborate really, and that's how I come up with the name. Nothing special. So this is pretty much Woodhill Park, and welcome to my world. Now with the layout lights on and the main lights off, the layout comes to life. For now I do have some sort of rudimentary sort of curtain going round the bottom of most of the layout, but I do hope to put something more permanent when I get close to finishing this sort of area. So this is basically the view I get sitting in my loft. Obviously if I put my head between the beams, I get a nice clear view of the layout. But due to the construction of the lofts, my views are a bit limited. It still works out as a nice world to chill out in, away from everybody and everything. And on a Friday night, it becomes a particularly good place to chill out and celebrate the end of the week. I hope you enjoyed this little insight into my layout, and you've seen some of the behind the scenes stuff that might answer some of your questions. Probably not all of them, but gives you a reasonable insight into the layout. I built this layout during COVID, and it was a saving grace, you might say, and like a lot of people not being able to get out, it was a good way of living your own little world and trying to forget about the mad world that was out there at the time. And it was a great sort of way to chill out, and I still enjoy just coming up here just to get away from the mad world out there and just live in my own world. And I'm sure a lot of people do the same with their model railways as well. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and any feedback is welcome, and if you want me to do anything along these lines in future, please leave a comment, and I'll see you again next time. So bye for now.